I'm lucky, I have very little stress in my life, and what stress I have is caused by me. It's internal, it isn't caused by anyone else. I'm a born worrier, so all the stress in my life is caused by me worrying, and that stress in my life would disappear if I just stopped worrying, which I'm not going to do because it's just part of my personality. But I'm lucky. I don't have very much stress in my life. And I think stress is the main problem, isn't it? Especially in this 21st century stress. Everyone's put under it. But all us oldies tend to be less susceptible to the stress. And that's just how it is. I can't feel guilty about it, I won't feel guilty about it. I can feel sympathy for those out there. I have kids who are in the 40s, or at least my daughter's in my 40s, my son's 38. They have good jobs, they have high pressure jobs, they have worries, families, mortgages, and all that stress. And what we don't need on top of all that stress is workplace stress. But we do, and we always have. And I think we always will, because we've got an attitude to work. At least the people who dictate what we do at work, how we work at work, they have an influence over how much stress we have in our life, and we accept it, don't we? We just go along and accept it, and that means that a lot of the stress that we have in our lives is there, it's caused by somebody else, it's dictated to by somebody else. There are some bluebells to the left here now coming up, and people keep asking, the bluebells I've been photographing, are they English or are they Spanish? And they're all English. And I talked about the drainage, and we don't have many Spanish because it's all clay soil around here, and I think the Spanish, I don't know, but I think the Spanish must like more drainage. I am now in part of what was an old quarry, so the ground has been disturbed and backfilled, and to my left here are lots and lots of Spanish bluebells. They're lighted, they're upright. English bluebells droop over like a shepherd's crook, but the Spanish ones stand upright, and here they are to my left. And to my right, we hope they live in harmony, because the Spanish ones will cross-pollinate with the English ones and they die out. Now, isn't that an age-old story of life itself? But we won't go down that road today, because we're talking about stress, and we're talking about workplace stress, and we're not coming up with any solutions. That's up to people. That's a personal thing, and that's a workplace thing, and that's a societal thing. All I can do is come out here and talk bollocks while I walk around with Molly, who's had a haircut, and we'll get her on camera to show you if we can, because she's loving it, she's springing about. She's lost 5 years, and it's always good, and it always fills my heart. And here she is. Here she is. Say hello, Molly. So I have very little stress in my life, but not so those who go out every day and set their nose firmly to the grindstone, grafting away, putting themselves under stress and being put under stress. And being put under stress is being put under stress by your managers. I wouldn't say your superiors, because much of the time they may be your inferiors, but you're being put under stress by managers, by those above you, by supervisors, managers, everybody right up to the top, because that pressure filters down from the top. And it's kind of a bullying pressure, isn't it? And is a bullying pressure the best way to go? Do you get the best results by bullying, or do you get the best results by cajoling? I think we all know a cajoling boss. Reflect. Did his workforce seem happier? Did they seem more productive? Or do you think that actual bullying and threats gets better results. It may get better results, but does it result in a happier workforce? But this is something that's gone on down the years, down the centuries, through the ages. People, lords and the serfs. Before that, it would be tribal leaders dressed in skins, roaming the plains. There was always one at the top, and that one person exerted their authority by threat. And thus it has always been, and thus it probably always will be. But I think that a lot of people in positions of authority are resented by the people underneath them, by the workforce underneath them, because of their attitude. And their attitude just comes from the attitude of the person who above them has said, get some results, get them bullied, tell them you'll sack them if you don't get this out by such and such a date. And then they go, oh my God, and then they pass on that bullying down the line and down the line and down the line, right to the last person, to the smallest cog in the corporate world, the one person who has no one underneath them, no one to tell what to do, no one to criticise, and they are the only person who cannot pass down that grief. Because the last person down that line is probably the most resentful. The last person above them is probably the most oppressive, because they've got layers of oppression above them. They've got bosses upon bosses upon bosses upon bosses going right up to the corporate ladder to the top, saying, get this done, you will get sacked, get it done by this date. And that goes right down. And two people are at the end. You've got the person at the top and the person at the bottom. The person at the top has no one to bully them. The person at the bottom has everyone to bully them. And that's how it is. And I think that's what makes a lot of workplaces such toxic places to work. I was self-employed. So for a long time, so all my bosses were my customers, but I had a good relationship with them. And I think that was the only time in my life I have worked, especially for one boss when I was very young, right up to when I was about 40, on and off, who was the most criminally awful boss you have ever come across, the biggest bully. And this was in the days when it was accepted that that's how bosses should be. But he wasn't a very bright man, although he was a hard worker and had done very well. So he had no clue whatsoever about man management, person management. So all he could do was shout and threaten all day, every day. I felt sick every day going to work, and I finally got away from him. And things changed. Things changed, because that's how much a toxic workplace, toxic bosses, that's how much they can affect your life. But are those toxic bosses, toxic people? I don't think they are. Not on the whole. I think those people are just part of the system. They're probably very nice people with very nice families and very nice values and wonderful parents, wonderful husbands and wonderful wives and wonderful family members, but they've all been subjected to this hierarchy of toxicity, this hierarchy of bullying. So that's what they become. May affect them in private life, I don't know, but you find that when you've worked for somebody and then you don't work for them anymore, and then you bump into them in the pub, and they're the nicest person possible, aren't they? They really are. They are a cog in the corporate wheel of toxicity and bullying. And this seems to be how we get results. And this all ramble is just to say, does it have to be that way? Is that the only way we get results in life? Does this spill over into our private? Is that how we get results with our kids? By bullying them, telling them what to do. It brings results, so it's the easiest thing to do. It also brings resentment, doesn't it? Bad feeling. A lot of families you find that don't actually get on that well is because of the relationship. And that relationship is because somebody in that relationship, usually the parent who gives the orders, runs it under an iron fist. They get results. Don't do this. So you don't do that because you know that if you do that, something's going to happen to you. But all that does is breed resentment. So you could end up living a life and being very successful and never being in trouble and everything like that because of the attitude of your parents, the aggressive attitude of your parents. And you could be a fabulous, upstanding member of the community, but dislike your parents, really, and dislike them because of the way they treated you, but the way they treated you got the results that worked. It's all a complicated web we weave. No, we're not trying to deceive. We're trying to be good people. And I think it's like that in the workplace. Do we need the toxicity? Is there too much whip and not enough carrot? And I'm not soft. I've worked all over the world in environments where screaming and shouting. I worked for a boss who we settled arguments by going outside into a plot of grass and fighting. And that's true. That happened to me. That was what it was like in the 70s. We were all as hard as nails, spent our lives fighting our way through life. But I just wonder, now I've got to an age where toxicity and where aggression isn't part and stress isn't part of my life anymore, that I think, does it have to be? Does it have to be? And lucky are those who live without stress, who live only with the natural stress that living in the 21st century brings, who don't live with unnecessary added stress, because that's what it is. It's like breakfast cereal with added vitamin, life with added stress. Get it now at your local supermarket. Through all those 50 years, those 5 long decades that I worked, I still maintain that I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed going to work. I never dreaded going to work. I always kind of looked forward to getting up and going to work. And I did work for some very toxic environments, but I think that's more about me. That says more about me than it does about the workplace. I am so easygoing, and that has its disadvantages because you can be taken advantage of and you can make foolish decisions, which I've done all my life. I'm a bit of a drifter, and I think that has advantages as well as disadvantages. One of those advantages being stress tends to wash over. I'm affected by stress just like everyone else, but it tends to pass over quickly and dissipate and disappear, and then I just get back into the norm again. But workplace stress passed down by those above you, by your supervisors, managers, directors. It's all passed down, and I think it's passed down as stress because we don't really, for the most part, most of us aren't that good at man management skills. We think that threats get the best results. They do get results. And I think in the workplace as a whole, there is more of a threat environment than a cajoling, friendly environment. If you work in a friendly environment, then well done you, you're on a winner. But if you don't, you're getting the results. But is it the best way to get the results? I don't know. Apart from being self-employed, that's the kind of environment I've always worked in. And when I went self-employed, it suddenly lifted and it was different, but it was down to me. So the threats came from me, and those threats were just about discipline. That was just about me disciplining myself to get up and go to work, and if I felt a bit under the weather, to get up and go to work. And as being self-employed and having no fallback on sick pay, you tend to get up and go to work when you shouldn't get up and go to work. And that's how it is, and thus it will always be. Stress. Do we need it? Can it be avoided? And the place we spend most of our time for 50 years is work. And a lot of that is working in environments where you're working with people and under people who are put under stress to make you get results. And the only way they know how to do that is pass on the stress down the line. So you are living 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with stress. All that time, more than half your life is spent under stress. We're a silly breed, aren't we? We're a silly species that is getting the privilege to be put on this earth and then make it bad, make it not a very nice experience for the most part. There are people across the world living in poverty, living in war zones, living with not only threats of being sacked, but threats of being killed. We don't seem to take any lessons from that, do we? We just carry on thinking, this is how it should be. I must bully the man around me to get results. And we accept it, and we accept the toxicity, and that's how it is. And that's probably how it always will be, because we're a strange species. As I've already said, is there too much stick and not enough carrot? If there was more carrot, would we be more productive and more sinister? If there was more carrot, would we actually miss the stick? We shall see you on the flip. Peace and love.